there was someone who showed up 3 hours early to sit in a lawn chair.
He's like, I want to be the first one that eats here. We were like, wow, okay. And then, didn't stop. I remember being in the kitchen right before we were about to open. I hadn't looked out in over an hour, and I peeped out, and the line was a rat around the corner. And I was like, whoa, okay. I don't know if we're ready for this, but let's see what happens.
I'm Guy Raz, and welcome to The Way Up, presented by Square, a new series where I sit down with entrepreneurs immersed in the day-to-day of building a business. We'll talk about the ups and downs that define their journeys and the communities critical to their success. Today, I'm talking to Chef Edgar Rico and Sara Mardanbigi, two East Austin restaurateurs who turned ancestral cooking techniques into the award-winning Nixta Taqueria. Edgar, Sara, welcome.
Howdy, Guy. How are you?
This story, I think, Edgar, begins around 2016. You decide to go visit some family in Mexico. It's going to be a short trip, but it turns into a 6-month journey. What happens on that trip?
At this point, in 2016, I had left LA, and I was planning on moving to Austin, but I was like, had some time in between, and I was like, well, if I have a little bit of time, because being a chef and being a cook, you don't really have too many days off, And I was like, man, I want to discover new tacos, maybe new styles that maybe I wasn't familiar with. But then, probably after like a week and a half of visiting the state where my parents are from, which is the state of San Luis Potosí, Mexico, which is in the northern desert part of Mexico. My grandmother was like, hey, you need to go down to Morelia. Your uncle is there. He has a friend who is a corn doctor. But then we went out with my uncle one day to meet him at one of these sites where they do research essentially for their corn. And I remember that was the day that was like that spark, that moment that I was like, oh shit, this is what I want to do. I remember going back there and my uncle was just like, peel back a stalk. And I was like, okay. And I remember just pulling it back and seeing like purple corn for the first time. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize there was purple corn, Keep going back, and then you started seeing like these cross-pollinators of like a black and purple corn, and keep going a little farther and you see a red corn. And it was just one of those experiences where I was like, whoa, okay, there's something to this. Proceeding then a few hours later that night to have a meal with those tortillas that his wife made. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, this is it. This is now what I want to focus my attention on, Nixtamalization of corn tortillas. And then I went deep into the rabbit hole.
So it was that spark, and which inspires you to really immerse yourself in the cuisine of Mexico, learn about nixtamalization, which is sort of alkalinizing corn and turning it into dough, which
Correct.
is the dough that you would use for tortillas. You spend a couple weeks at one of the most famous restaurants in the world, Pujol, doing a stage, an internship.
Yeah.
And eventually you make your way back to the United States, to Austin, with the dream of opening your own place.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, after the journey, I decided to head back to Austin and try and figure out and get this thing going. But in the interim, I decided to get a job doing some catering on the side. And it just so happened to be that while I was doing that job, I met this young lady right here.
Serendipity,
yeah,
as fate would have it, because from what I understand, it was your last day, Sara, and it was your first day working at this place.
Mm-hmm. It was, like you say, the universe was definitely looking out for us that day. And yeah, there was I feel like one of those moments in your life when you see someone walk in, you're like, damn, like that girl's cute.
Sara, when you first met Edgar that night and you started to talk about all kinds of things and you listened to Edgar's story and his dreams, at what point after that did you decide, I want to join forces. I want to help make this happen?
I kept him waiting for a second. So we had that conversation the evening, and then I drove straight to Arkansas that night. So 9-hour drive to go visit my family. I was taking a little break in between the two jobs. So millennial thing, DM'd him, slid into those DMs, asked for a couple of jokes, landed the jokes, and then got the date.
I mean, it's amazing because obviously you're romantic partners, but you also became professional partners. And you grew up in the restaurant business. I think your dad had a restaurant. So you begin this, what would be a 3-year-long journey, planning and experimenting and trying to figure out what you wanted to build. Take me into that period of time. What were you doing?
I had, started my journey in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, eventually got into finance, moved into event management, moved into South by Southwest, moved into HR. And for us, it just seemed really like a yin and yang situation. One of the first reasons I think I did fall in love with you, he made me a French omelet, and I was like, okay, yeah, this I can get used to.
No color on it, perfect.
Yeah,
for sure.
Perfect. So we knew he had this very special talent. He's been cooking since he's 10 years old. I call myself an expert generalist, where my dad always told me anyone can learn anything. And so I sort of took that mentality all throughout my life. And if I wanted, I got a moped. I learned how to do all the mechanics on it. I had never worked in event management. We would do 40 events in a weekend for up to, 10,000 people. HR had never done, but okay, I'm helping to open up all these different stores in other states for a different taco spot. Hospitality is something that we both grew up with. There's just a genuine warmth that comes from both Mexican and Iranian cultures. So for us, it felt very natural to do it. Not something exactly my mom wanted me to get into. It actually took her 3 years before she visited the restaurant.
She was very unsure of if this, because I think she had saw with their family, with the struggles that they had to go through of opening a restaurant. It's not easy. The restaurant industry, as you know, the margins you're not there to get rich, Like, if you are truly in this game, you have to know that it's a long road. And to get to even opening your own restaurant, you either have to be really smart with how you open it and not spend a lot of money, or you're very lucky that you were born potentially into wealth, and we did not fall into that latter category. We happened to not have any investors, and for us, it was kind of a crazy decision in the beginning, because people were like, how are you not going to have any investors? How are you guys going to build this restaurant? And it's very hard, because no one's going to write you a loan or give you a small business loan if you don't have previous credit before that. So trying to open a restaurant, you're trying to say, hey, this is the idea I want to have. These are the projections we're hoping to make. A bank's going to look at it, but they're probably just going to laugh you out of the building, because they're like, all right, cool. Where's your credit history? Like, oh, I don't have any. Or like, you have a personal one, but not a business one per se. So that for us was an immediate eye-opener. And we're like, okay, well, we don't have access to capital like we were hoping, but you know what? We do have a lot of great friends who are handy. We happened to find a space that was ironically a restaurant prior to us taking over. And it had the bones of a restaurant that was pretty much turnkey almost situation, minus installing a grease trap. But yeah, it was pretty much ready to go. So we're like, okay, if we can open this restaurant for $50,000, $75,000, we should be in the green pretty quick. That was our hope.
You guys had almost the perfect partnership, because you've got an operations partner. You could focus on the menu and on cooking. You were trying to do something both very traditional and also unorthodox. I mean, masa, making the masa, making the tortillas, but also using duck confit instead of pork for carnitas. You scrounged together all the money you have. You opened this restaurant, I think, in October of 2019. And you're out there. You're out there in probably one of the taco capitals of the United States. Fair to
Absolutely,
say.
yeah.
And you're doing something a little bit out of the box. What was the response? What was the reaction from people in the community when you opened?
We were just hoping. That morning when we opened, my brother had flown down. He was helping to hang up some last minute things. And I remember we just had like a small little water dispenser. We had, I don't know, like 50 forks and 50 knives. We're like, it's gonna be a neighborhood spot. It's a 600 square foot space. We'll see who shows up. And there was a line. There was someone who showed up 3 hours early
Had
to
like
sit
a
in a
lawn
chair.
chair to just pull up. He's like, I want to be the first one that eats here. We were like, wow, okay. And then,
It didn't stop, and it was
Well,
scary.
I remember being in the kitchen because there's a window that faces all the way out. And I remember the line getting bigger and bigger. And then right before we were about to open, I hadn't looked out in over an hour, and I peeped out, and the line was a rack around the corner. And I was like, whoa, okay. I don't know if we're ready for this, but let's see what happens.
So you open up the restaurant. There's lines around the corner. People are anticipating this. I think a few weeks into it, you get an amazing review from a well-known critic at the Texas Monthly.
Pat Sharp, yeah.
Who says these are some of the best tacos in Texas. It's unbelievable. More and more people are coming. And then, of course,
Pump the brakes.
COVID. Mm-hmm. You shut down. You have to shut down.
Well, in Texas, it was a little different.
It's a little different. But people were still nervous to come. And so all of a sudden, the momentum slows. How did you keep things afloat? What happened? Did the community rally around you? Were you able to shift to takeout orders pretty quickly?
So we were just kind of monitoring what was happening in New York and LA and seeing some of the models that a lot of people were doing. We're like, whoa, okay, everyone's now shifting, it seems like, to go. The way the building is kind of set up, we were like, we could make this kind of a drive-through situation if we need to for the time being. And we just kind of got to work with that.
We ran like a burger pop-up, so we were doing smash burgers with different fries. And to Edgar's point, we kind of had a drive-through situation.
Oh yeah, that was a day to remember for sure. I remember looking out, there was like a car line a mile long down the street, and I was like, and at that point, it was that moment, it just switches in your head. You're like, put everything on the grill and just go. Yeah. And it didn't stop for like an hour, and it was just boom, 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 boom. But
we did what we could during the pandemic. I think everyone does.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have been forced to try many different things because of circumstances, but you've also made decisions to try a bunch of different things. You're a James Beard Award winner. You are a Food and Wine Best New Restaurant. You've received all these accolades. As you have pivoted and as you continue to grow and experiment, how are you using Square tools to help you realize all of those different possibilities?
I think it's definitely grown with us. So from the day we opened, we just had one of the Square stands. We're like, oh, we'll be fine with this. We were really wrong.
Yeah.
So our concept is a counter service concept. You order, you sit down, and then once you sit down, it becomes more full service. So from that point, we're like, okay, we're gonna need things that are mobile with us, taking transactions on there. Anytime we do the Persian pop-up, it's nice for us to be able to have someone outside with a stand, someone inside, and you're keeping it very seamless. But I think overall, like truthfully, every person I've worked with at Square has always championed and wanted to help. They'll say, hey, let's get on the line, let's see what we can do. For our team, it's always easy. They know when the schedule's coming out. They're able to swap things. They're able to keep it moving without having to get in our hair too much.
And it's also cool for me, too, to have seen the evolution of it. Because, like, from when we, like she was saying, in 2020 when it started, I think they've been key to, like, evolve with. They released, like, their little handheld product. That was, for us, a game changer. Because, like she was saying, then we're able to give people just like a better service by not having to get up, because after you've ordered, you've waited hours in line. Like, we don't want you to have to get back in line. Like, that defeats the purpose. That's not hospitable in any way. So having that access to like be able to walk up to a table and like, what else can we get you guys? That drives revenue up for us too. That gives you those extra sales that, maybe that a couple extra duck carnitas that someone's jonesing for at the end of their meal. But yeah, those little things that we've seen, like the evolution of it. And now that even on your phone, like that for me has been the biggest game changer. Cause like I remember I was doing a pop-up out in Marfa like a few weeks ago and I forgot my Square reader and I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna charge people? Like, I guess we could use cash, but then one of my employees was like, you can just use your phone now, right? I was like, oh, wow. So that was huge game changer. So, to be able to be out in the middle of the desert and all you need is just your phone and just tap, everyone's just tapping, boom, boom, boom. Like we are truly living in the future.
You guys have dealt with COVID, ice storms, heat waves, and everything in between. There was a ice storm in Texas in 2021 in the winter. A lot of people lost power, including you guys. And during that time, you made free food. You served people food who needed it. And it was sort of part of your reputation kind of begins to grow as a place where people know that they're going to be taken care of. Obviously, it's a restaurant, it's a business, but if people need help, they knew that they could come to you. Fast forward to 2023, a very hot summer, and the power gets shut off to the restaurant. And initially you think it's going to be a day or two. This turns into a 7-month period where you cannot reopen. And there's a real chance you're going to go under. What did you do? What did you start to think about doing, Sara?
I started crying and I said, this is a death sentence for our restaurant. Because if you've never been in like building development or restaurant development, there's not two buckets or categories for a small business versus a business that has multi-million dollars in investment. So at that point, we're like, it's a survival mode. We're like, we did this on our own in the beginning with a few friends, with a couple of personal loans. I don't know how we're going to survive without the community. So we threw out a line.
You needed hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring it up to code in repairs. And you decided to crowdfund that. I mean, you had no other choice.
Right.
I guess expecting maybe some people would help.
Right.
But it was actually an overwhelming response.
It exploded.
We had originally asked, I think, we didn't know. We're like, okay, maybe $50K. Just permitting alone is about $15,000 for it to get approved. Electrical, structural, plumbing, it all, one can't get done without the other. So we went to crowdfunding, and within 2 days we had raised $120,000. And that, I bawled my eyes out. I was just so overwhelmed that they were there, That's the best in people.
Somebody wrote on the crowdfunding site, y'all fed us when we were frozen. You figured out how to make curbside happen when people were sick. You feed the community with the fridge and pantry. You lift other area chefs up. It's the least we could do.
Yeah. I still get emotional thinking about it because we had to have this conversation with our team. We don't know if we're going to open. We don't know when we'll open. You're seeing 30 people who are depending on you and you don't have any answers. I think human resilience is such a beautiful thing, and we had to do it time and time again. So it's almost like you're conditioned to it, but you never quite get used to it. You have to just push through it. I think we're just really, really grateful that
just the community rallied back and like got us back on our feet, because there was so much uncertainty. You don't know, like you have no idea if you're ever going to reopen. And I mean, the weeks, the days that we were like, oh, is this going to be a quick reopening, turned into weeks, then turned into months. And to have gotten over that hump was this just huge weight off your back. We were like, okay, I think we're going to be okay. But, it's the restaurant industry. It's always a new challenge every single day, whether it's staffing, whether it's, menu development, whether it's prices of eggs, which are skyrocketing right now, that you have to always be tinkering with every little part of it. There's no day that's ever the same, which is kind of the best and worst part of the restaurant industry in a way.
A lot of highs and lows.
A lot of highs and lows, for sure.
Give me a sense of the vision. I mean, there's a lot of demand. You probably have a lot of people coming to you and saying, hey, can we open more restaurants? We love what you're doing. What do you imagine Nixta will be in 5 or 10 years from now?
I think we always talk about preservation versus evolution and being really cognizant about what are these opportunities and does it align with what we want to do. Going through that re-permitting kind of killed my spirit a little, but I'm bouncing back. But I think eventually we talked about doing the inverse of Nixta, which is instead of mostly Mexican with a little bit of Persian, it's mostly Persian with a little bit of Mexican. So that would be my little food baby.
We're very excited. We're tinkering with that right now. I'm running it as a pop-up and seeing the reception that it's getting. And we're like, okay, I think the U.S. is ready for some Persian food in its life because it's not well represented at all. You don't really see too many Persian restaurants throughout the U.S. And the ones that you do are usually masked as Mediterranean, or it's pretty much generally the same menu of like grilled kebabs. But there's so much more depth to Persian food than just kebabs. So we're excited to share that with the world.
Could you have imagined when you took that 6-month trip to Mexico in 2016 that you would have won the James Beard Award, Food and Wine, all of these accolades, lines around the block, and the community rallying around you? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, never in a million years. That was never my intention, you know. It was, I think, for us, we just wanted to open up a business that we were proud of, that we could make our parents proud of, and just represent our culture to the fullest. And, you know, to people to have really seen and gravitated towards that, to where we're at now, it's beyond words, to be honest. Like, you know, standing here with you on this set, like, you know, you would have never thought, like, we just had a dream and an idea and a few bucks, and we just wanted to try and make it happen by any means necessary. And we grinded it out, and we still do every single day, literally and figuratively. But yeah, it's really cool to see just how this has all evolved.
Edgar, Sara, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're officially part of the taco mafia now.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm Guy Raz, and you've been watching The Way Up, a series presented in partnership with Square. On our next episode, we sit down with 3 businesses in the midst of expansion. Hear from the owners and executives running Nixta Taqueria, The Sports Bra, and Charles Pan Fried Chicken.